how could I forget the Sweat Lodge, the Tesmacall, the best. For me, that was out of every experience that we did, some would say, for some it was taking mushrooms and dancing naked under the moonlight, because there was a ecstatic dance. I chose not to go to the ecstatic dance. I chose to have a love affair with a glass of wine and a piece of dark chocolate and sit under the moon by myself, which was amazeballs. But for me, it was the Tesmacall, the Sweat Lodge. So the Tesmacall is a ritual that they do in Mexico, and we had a medicine man and 3 assistants. And so what the whole procedure is around is really for you to, you're gonna get uncomfortable. A lot of your shadow parts are gonna come up, and it's really for you, we call in the elements. Before we get in the Sweat Lodge, we get sage to clear our energy. And then we're given tobacco. So traditionally, you are given tobacco, some form of tobacco. You set an intention with that tobacco of what you want to get out of the Sweat Lodge, and what you're looking to create, and then you throw it in the fire where all the lava rocks are that they're going to put in the Sweat Lodge. And they refer it to like a mother's womb. It's pure concrete, and when you go inside, it's no bigger than probably 5'2" tall. So I was able to barely stand up in it through the whole thing. So if you're pretty tall, there's no way you're ever gonna get to stand up fully in it. So we all go in, and I have 2 amazing, they're now like my soul brothers that are by my side. I have one on my left, one on my right, and James was on my right and Mark was on my left. And they were just like, they were my 2 anchors through the whole thing. And so the medicine man comes in with the 3 assistants, and they come in. Now keep in mind, it is pitch black dark, and there's one candle lit, and before they start the ceremony, the medicine man has a bowl with a chunk of wax in it, and then he has deer antlers, and he says, before we start each ceremony, because we're going to do 4 ceremonies, someone is to take the wax, set an intention. So you take the wax, you touch the coal or the hot rock, and you set a collective intention for the group, whether it's growth, whether it's love, whether it's forgiveness, whether it's detachment. When you take that wax, you touch the coal, and then you take the deer antlers, and you take the antlers and you scrape the rock almost to embed it in. We broke them up in segments. So there was one ceremony, they opened up the door for like 3 to 5 minutes, put more coal in. Another ceremony, opened up the door, put more coal in. Another ceremony. So we did that 4 times. So we had 4 stages of it. And each one of the stages were to invoke the north, the south, the east, the west for all of the elements. And it was to call our ancestors in. It was to invoke the divine feminine. It was to invoke the dark shadow parts within ourselves, and to really face those shadow parts of ourselves. So it's some pretty heavy shit. So interesting enough, 3 out of the 4 ceremonies, the medicine man chose me to set the intentions. I was given the antlers twice, and I was given wax 1 time. So 3 out of the 4 ceremonies, I was called upon to invoke the intention for the whole group. So we get in, and the medicine man comes in, we set our intention. The 3 assistants are all, and we're all snuggled in this like mother's womb, and we're all sitting, literally, we're sitting like this. And these are some big men. There was only 3 women in the group, and so 20 plus men. So we're all sitting like this because you can't sprawl out for over an hour and a half about. And they take hot water, and they take herbs, and they take grapefruit juice and lemon, and they blow the candle out, and the medicine man just starts chanting and calling in the ancestors, all these different phases. Then they take the water, dip it in the water, and splash us and bless us. Dip it in the water, splash us and bless us. And the assistants are banging on drums and rattles and like full ceremony, singing and chanting and calling and all of these things. Imagine being in the pitch dark, and you have a medicine man singing or chanting in pitch black, and you hear people all around you sobbing and crying and begging for forgiveness and shouting out what they're grateful for, or shouting out their biggest fear or their shadow parts, you can't help but get overwhelmed, and you can't help but going, holy shit, it's overwhelming. So for me, it was interesting because I found myself in the first two ceremonies, I was so wide open that I actually was freezing cold and I had goosebumps. And so I was getting a lot of downloads, a lot of clear, distinct messages, and just really open. And one of the messages that was downloaded for me was, that was distinct, that I heard in the ceremony was, stop being so hard on yourself. Stop being so hard on yourself. Stop punishing yourself. Stop shaming yourself. You are enough, and stop getting in your own way. After we get done, so that's 4 rounds of that, about an hour and a half, we get out of the circle and outside, and then we get hosed off. And we all just, from the pictures, we're all glowing and we're all crying. And they encouraged us to take space for a while to download, because it was pretty heavy for some people. And that night, James to the right of me, or was it 2 nights later? I think it was 2 nights later. The last night he came up to me and he goes, I had a very loud, distinct download that came to me to tell you, and I have to tell you. And I'm like, okay. And he was like, you were called 3 out of the 4 times to set the intention for the group, because you're one of the most powerful people in this group, and you need to continue to speak your truth. And I was like, oh my God. And I started to cry, and I was like, another validation that I'm on path, and by me speaking my truth, I'm not only healing myself, I'm helping heal others. And the second download that he got, he said, when I had the wax, one of my words that I touched the rock was detachment. And I went to the rock and I said detachment, and then I stood up. And he said, the moment that I went down and touched that rock and said detachment, and keep in mind he's sitting next to me, a piece of coal flew off and hit him on the foot and burned his foot, and he now has a scar on his foot. And he said, when you did that and said detachment, now I have this burn. And he goes, interesting enough, my download this week is that I need to detach from a very codependent relationship with my father. And he's like, so it's permanently on me now, the word detachment. And I said, well, I don't find this coincidental. And I said, this tattoo right here, that's detachment in Sanskrit. And I said, so clearly, it's my gift to you to say, you gotta learn to detach and let go. And I was there to imprint that onto you now forever with the scar. So for me, the sweat lodge was so ceremonial, and it was so heart-opening for me. And again, it's back to those rituals. It's back to that sacred space where we as humans collectively get together in a space where there's no difference between you and I. There's no difference with, whether you're a female or male, if you're black or you're white, or you're fit or you're not fit, or you're successful or you're poor. We go to this space and it's no different. So I was sad. I was like, I want to do that shit every day when I was there, but we didn't get the opportunity to. But it was magical.